CosmicRadio.TV. All right, a few disclaimers before we get into this thing. 1. This album was given to me as a review copy. I should also include that I did pre-order the album and helped during the original Kickstarter. 2. Mega Ran has been a frequent guest on my podcast for interviews, and one of the guests I love to have on. 3, and this is most important, Raheem is the creative person I strive every day to be. He is a greater inspiration to me and my content creating career than he'll ever know or understand. And I'm not even a rapper or musician. If all of this makes what I'm about to say just a little biased, so be it. Rest assured though, much like this album, this is all coming from a place of honesty. No matter what name you call him by, whether it be Mega Ran, Random, or Ran, Raheem Jarbo is a force in nerdcore that's hard to address or contain. With numerous albums, collaborations, and tours in Japan, the UK, and the US, there's really nothing stopping this guy. Suffice to say, his latest album, RNDM, has a lot to live up to. So when I received an early review copy, I was excited to listen to it. Alright, I'm not going to bear the lead here. This is by far the best album Raheem has produced to date. And don't get me wrong, I'm a huge Forever Famicom fan, huge Mega Ran fan, heck, huge fan of pretty much everything he does. But there's something about this album that kind of surpasses everything. It's almost this album could only happen at this time. I mean, with all different producers on there, from DN3 to K Murdoch to everybody he's ever met. I mean, even the opening track kicks off with one of the artists he met in Japan while he was doing his tour there. It kind of has this sort of feeling of we're traveling through his life, and that this album could only happen at this point in time. So while I'm not going to do a track-per-track review of the album, I do think that there are some tracks that are worth a discussion. Everything in the album's great, but these are the ones, in my opinion, that stand out. Starting off with the first song, Same As It Ever Was. So when the song opens up with Yamane's beautiful piano solo for the beat of the rhymes, I knew I was in for a treat. It just kicks off this album perfectly. It makes sense to open up with it, with lyrics talking about, Raheem's frustration with Spotify, his recent marriage proposal, the reception of his career. It gives us sort of this update of his life, but it really kind of leads us in. He actually says the lyric within the song saying, "Rest assured it's honest as long as I'm involved." And it really kicks off the idea that the album that we're going to be listening to today is pretty much everything that's honest about his life. And it really kind of makes sure to put you, the listener, in the right mindset to hear the rest of this album.
Listen. See, the great thing.
Probably the most surprising song on the album is A Poet. For starters, the beat is great. Although that's kind of been how the album's been going anyways, but it's still good to hear a strong beat with strong lyrics. The big thing, though, is, fuck. If this is a whole true story, holy shit, it is revealing. I think back to the last time I had Raheem on the podcast. He explained that this album would have every piece of him that he left out of the records, and this track shows that perfectly. It's haunting, tragic, and really daring to hear him talk about this. Usually, Raheem will reveal certain aspects of himself in a song. Usually, it'll be a little bit deep cutting. It's never been this one, and it's daring that he talks about it on this album, let alone a nerdcore one. It's one of my favorite tracks on the album, and there's just something about everything with it. I'm a huge fan of albums and songs that tend to reveal more of the artist or tend to kind of get deeper into it. And this, out of all the tracks in the album, as much as I love everything on this album, is probably the best example of that.
Yeah, I'm ready.
One of the other treats in this album, of course, is the K Murdoch produced song, The Meeting. It's really interesting to have a song where you have essentially the two halves of an artist talking, in this case, Random and Mega Ran. If you know a little bit of the history of Raheem, you understand that at first he came in as Random, then eventually changed his name to Mega Ran, and sort of almost changed the direction, but still had the same feeling. The song itself gives a strange clarity to the other tracks on the album. In the song, Mega Ran says, "But I promise to make sure they see a piece of you because you're the inspiration in every single piece I do." It's sort of explaining the idea that when Raheem was rapping under the name Random, he tended to approach a lot of social issues within the album, specifically if you listen back to his first album, The Call. Whereas Mega Ran still will touch on those every so often, but a lot of times he'll still kind of go nerdy and sort of make geeky references. Like, in other words, Random at the point of his career probably would never have made the Mega Ran album or Forever Famicom or any of the tracks that most of you guys know about. But it's interesting to see that whole idea, that one single lyric pay off on the album, like songs like Revisions or Losses, or even our previous one, A Poet. They're, both addressing issues that Random would have talked about. If all these songs seem to weigh you down and you still need to have that sort of nerdcore classic feel, don't worry, there are some lighthearted songs in the album. Songs like Your Favorite Song and Infinite Lives are two great examples. Even though the songs aren't covering as serious subjects like the song Revisions, both show the creative flair and really hit hard to the point of how Random approaches making his music and what he hopes for the future and why he pushes as hard as he does. Both those songs sort of show off the idea of, as an artist, how he wants to be well known and be bigger so he can sort of keep pushing and forward and stuff like that, and ultimately why he does what he does. I think one of the better examples, of course, is Infinite Life. So the idea that when you create something, it lives beyond you. And what does that mean for you as an artist? Do you approach it as, well, I'm just going to do this for the money, or do I approach it as, I want to at least leave my mark on something? And it's something that sort of, as a creative myself, personally strives to, the idea of creating something to leave your mark on the world in some capacity. There is one thing I do want to touch on this review. Before we go into exactly what I want to touch on, you know what? Hear this from the last time I had Raheem on the show.
Oh, and a lot of
I'm only gonna personally hope, even though I doubt that's the case, but only gonna personally hope that one of those hidden projects, one of those like secret, like I signed NDA, else ninjas come out and kill me kind of thing. That one of those hidden projects is Mighty Number 9. That's my only hope and dream. My only hope and dream.
That would be amazing.
It was funny to listen back in the past to kind of hear yourself give you a weird nugget of truth in certain things. Like even during the interview, he ends up slipping in Japanese developers or something like that. And it's so funny thinking back to that and then coming back to now and having the song, the bonus track in this album being Mighty, a song collaboration for the upcoming concept game Mighty Number 9, one of the most anticipated platforming Kickstarters out there. I have to just disclaim, I am a contributor to the game. Mighty Number 41773 represent! It was a super happy surprise to hear about the collaboration. It was an awesome treat to get this bonus, and as usual, it's a Mega Ran song, so it brings the whole story or a future hero, saving humanity. Well worth a listen to and a complete surprise on the album. It's one of those fun things. If you do want to hear, of course, the actual creation of the song, because it's a really interesting story hearing from not just only from Mega Ran later on, but specifically from his producer for it, Kyle Murdoch. I actually had him on the show recently, and he sort of talks about not only the meeting, but he also talks about this song. Like I learned that it was like in February when they figured out that they were doing this song. It was a really funny story, but yeah, just click over here to listen to it. So what's my closing thoughts on this album? Well, the way I see it, if you've ever wanted to hear a Mega Ran album where he pulls out all the stops, calls in all of his favors he's ever had, asks everyone he's ever worked with or toured with or whatever to produce something special, this is the album for you. Seriously, I think I've been playing this in my car and in my iPod and iPhone and everything else for pretty much since I was given the review copy of this album. I didn't notice, like, it was funny, I've listened to like so many songs so many times that I would pick up something new on like the 10th playthrough that I didn't even hear. It's a real inspiration to a creative like me to see a guy that I view as on the top, that there's still room to grow and evolve, that there's still places to go, that there really isn't a pinnacle, that it ultimately is how you approach your craft and whatever that is. So look, if you haven't picked up the album, if this doesn't convince you to go buy it right now, I don't know what will. So look, here's a link to the album. Go right now, purchase it wherever you buy albums, whether it be iTunes, Bandcamp. Just listen to the damn thing, because it's such a pleasure to hear, and it's such a great album. possibly one of the top, if not the top album for me this year. If you happen to like this review, hit that big old like button, and of course hit that big subscribe button over there. I really kind of want to do more of these sort of experiences with either music or sort of things that don't quite fit in any of the current shows that we have. Just sort of my experiences on things like that, or even from the other crew here on the network. It's always fun to talk about things like this and kind of geek out on stuff, whether it be obviously we geek out a lot of video games, we geek out a lot of movies and whatnot, but I always like kind of talking about music. It's always a fun thing to do, especially digging into an album, stuff like that. So if you want to hear more of these, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you have already stuff you'd love me to talk about. Maybe there's a album that's out there like, man, I'd love to hear Roberto's opinion on this album, or you know what, I heard you talking about this other thing, tell me about that. I'd love to give those sort of dumps of information, sort of my take on these sort of things. Thanks for watching, and of course, till next time, ta-ta.
Tell the legislators we need a new ordinance. The numbers are important and terribly disproportionate. Columbus's journey still in my text, huh? We know it's a